Allow me to introduce Thomas Spyt. He's originally from Poland, and he began his coaching career during his medical career. He had a vast majority of patients that were being cured of cancer, some with less unfortunate moments, limited life expectancy, and desperate families in need of support. And he had to learn it by mastering empathy and linguistic skills, a baptism by fire, so to speak. And then one point is, how do you coach or look after the psychological needs of a 5-year-old who knows they are dying of cancer? His further training took him to the UK. He has a British medical degree. He was a surgical trainer in Leicester, Bristol, Glasgow, Cleveland Clinic, and in Ohio. It led him to the position of a consult cardiac surgeon and professor of cardiovascular surgery. After becoming a consultant, he's also the trainer of surgeons and demanding the coaching and mentoring skills. Then he had a breakthrough in 2006. He completed his neurolinguistic practitioner course. He's acquired fundamental knowledge of communication, how it can be used to the advantage of his patients then and now. After retirement, he is trained extensively in life coaching, NLP, and hypnosis. And his goal is to help those who are in the need of overcoming obstacles in their life. Thomas, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Brilliant introduction. Thank you so much. Right. I'm going to talk not for long about something what most people don't know about. This is about the three principles. It's a term coined by a Canadian philosopher called Sydney Banks. Sydney Banks was born in Scotland. He was uneducated and worked in Glaswegian shipyard until shipyards ran out of work, and he emigrated to Canada, where he continued to work as an unskilled worker in the pulp mill. And he had enlightenment. And he coined this term, the three principles. So let's start with what is the principle. Oh, principle is a rule which explains how things work. And the rule is constant. It doesn't change. It's not a belief. It's not a concept. It's not an idea. It's not a model. It's a constant. And a good metaphor for what I'm talking about is a principle of gravity. It always works, without any exemption. So the three principles are about to explain how life works. It's not a prescription. I'm not telling you what you should be doing or how you should be seeing the world. It is how we all do. The all 7.7 billion of us on this planet experience life exactly the same way, regardless of age, gender, race, culture, religion, language. It doesn't matter. In this respect, we all do exactly the same. So what are the three principles? The first one is the principle of mind. Difficult to explain. If somebody asks you, tell me, what's the mind? You would have very odd difficulty to describe it. The second principle is the principle of consciousness. What is it? Very difficult to describe as well. The third one is the principle of thought. Or could you explain what's the thought? Another one, impossible really to explain. We all know what all three terms mean, but it's really very difficult to define what they mean. Well, one of the best metaphors to illustrate what I'm talking about, we all remember the first time we went to the cinema, either with parents or older siblings. And as all young children do, they are very curious, where are these pictures coming from? And eventually we turned back and we saw this white flickering light. This is our mind. Now, the screen is a consciousness. In psychology, even modern psychology, it says we were either conscious or unconscious. It's not quite true. Consciousness has got an infinite number of levels, and I will explain this in a minute. And the picture on the screen is a good metaphor for a thought. So, talking about consciousness, what I mean is a infinite number of levels, because you can look at consciousness as a lift, a glass lift outside a skyscraper. And this lift is moving up and down all day long. And when we look through the glass on the ground floor, quite often it doesn't look that nice. Busy, lots of people. There's a lot of dust, maybe some dirt around, some rubbish flying. But then the lift goes up, because it always does. And when you look through the window on the 30th floor, it looks alright. Has anything changed outside? No. It's exactly the same world. When is it important to understand, and why is it important to understand that the consciousness has got so many levels? Because quite often we go to bed in a bad mood, or we wake up in a bad mood. And if we remember that the glass lift of our consciousness is going to go up, we know that we don't have to do anything about it, our bad mood, because it's going to pass. It's just going to pass. We can influence mood by getting in touch with nature, which means often simply enough to go for a walk or listen to the music. And there's another explanation for this, which I might have enough time to go back to. Now, when you look at the screen in the cinema, you are watching different films. Some are funny and we laugh. Some are sad and we may even cry. Some are designed to frighten us. And what it is, the picture on the screen, a thought, will create a feeling. And what psychologists to this day don't seem to be able to accept the central position, central role of thoughts in our lives. Because there's no feeling without the thought first. So when somebody comes to me and says, well, can you help me? I've got this terrible anxiety and then it really interferes with my life. I said, yes, I understand. And of course I can deal with it, either by means of an LP or even hypnosis. But that's easy. But if I do that, they're going to come back again with something else. And something else again. Until they understand that it is only a thought which created the feeling. Now the importance of it is that feelings always result in an action. And remember that no action is also an action. And every action has got its consequences. And that's why it's so important. That's why the position of the thought in our life is so central, so fundamentally important to all of us. So there's plenty of coaches who talk about a mindfulness coach, which the term itself is just contradictory, because if you want the peace, you don't want to have your mind full of thoughts. Quite opposite. But how to control thoughts? You may say, well, yes, but can I control my thoughts? Can I have a good thoughts or not? No, you can't. All thoughts are neutral. And on average, we would get about 10 to 30,000 thoughts a day. They are all neutral to start with. Our level of consciousness, to what I've said to you, our mood, will make thoughts either positive or negative. Okay, so let's say that you're in a bad mood and the thought came to, and it's not a nice thought. What to do with it? Well, we have got the power not to engage with thought which we see or perceive as a negative thought. Now, how to do it? Several examples how to do it. For most of us, particularly in the type of work you do, we use phones all the time. We look at the LinkedIn, sometimes on the Facebook, maybe on Instagram. And what we do, we just look at the messages. And we spend usually 2-3 seconds. If something is interesting, we continue. If not, we scroll. So when it comes to your thought which you don't like, keep on scrolling. You're not going to become suddenly, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have any thoughts. Next thought is going to come straight away. The different way of illustrating how to get rid of thoughts which are unpleasant is when you drive a car. And most of us listen to music. Some of songs, some of pieces of music we like, and some we don't. And there are two ways of dealing with when we hear something we don't like listening to. We either turn the volume down. You can do exactly the same with a thought. Or even better, we just change the radio station. And that's how you deal with thoughts you don't want to. So as I said to you, it's not a prescription how you should live your life. It is a description how life works. The implications of it are enormous. One of the most important for any of us, not only for a coach, whatever sort of coach it is, including business coaches, is the ability to understand. Most of us are preoccupied, listen to an answer. But there's a different way of listening. Some people, there's a very famous American psychologist, Jack Pransky, who wrote a lot on the subject of 3 principles. But let's, just if any of you was interested to read more about it. So, what we can do when we listen. Well, listening to understand means to ask when we don't understand something. The effect of it is profound on the speaker, because they suddenly realize, well, the person is interested. There's no better connection between humans as to be interested in another person. Some people call it curiosity. If you want to establish connection with a stranger, it's enough to express some curiosity. Ask, What are you reading? Where are you going? When you meet on long flights or traveling by train, that's how people start conversations. Now, so asking somebody the question when we don't understand not only makes them feel important, they are considered to be interested, but also allows them to rephrase whatever they said to make it simpler, and is always appreciated. Sometimes that sort of deep listening is illustrated by two examples when it happens absolutely naturally. The first example is of the young mother whose baby starts crying. And of course, baby cannot speak, so still, mother is able to recognize whether the baby is hungry or needs a change of diaper or is just frustrated. The second situation, when we listen to understand, we are fascinated by the other person, is at the beginning of romantic relationship. We just are curious about other person. We want to understand them. So this is one of many examples. Understanding of the three principles is one thing. What you are likely going to find, as I did, is to follow what they are, because it requires some discipline not to engage, for instance, with the painful memories from the past, memories which bring a feeling of regret, feeling of loss. And sometimes it's okay for us to engage with that sort of memories. Sometimes we may choose to do that. I spend a lot of my time working with British veterans. And a lot has been written on PTSD since the Vietnam War. And it's really fascinating reading why PTSD happens in some groups of people and it doesn't happen in other groups of people in certain conflicts. Like, for instance, the war in Afghanistan and Iraq did not produce as many cases of PTSD as the war in Vietnam. So there are marked differences, and some wars did not produce any PTSD. Example of it is interesting enough Israel, probably because the whole country is on the alert of being at war. So the soldiers who even experience a trauma in the battlefield, they are accepted back into the community which understands this, and the incidence of PTSD is extremely low, like in 1-2%, while amongst the Vietnam veterans was as high as 30%. Now, as I said, these are fundamentals of what is essential for all of us to know. Why it is so important? I also work with inmates. Well, that's quite interesting. People who start following the three principles, there is what happens is the remarkable reduction in incidence of assaults, homicides, increase in employment, reduction in school suspensions, increase the parental involvement in schools, 84% reduction in the incidence of anxiety, 70% reduction in depression, 85% increase in a positive relationship. So that is why it is helpful. This is why it is helpful to understand that all change comes from inside. Not from, never from outside, only from inside. For the first time in history, the understanding offers psychological constants or principles how the mind works. And is not based on theories. Since the death of Sigmund Freud, 400 theories were created. And as said, it is constant. William James, known as father of American psychology, predicted, he lived in the 19th century, predicted that when we find foundation laws or principles behind human functioning, it could evolve humanity more than since humans discovered fire. In the last sentence, I wish somebody told me. Somebody should have told us. Nobody told us because our parents didn't know and our teachers didn't know. Thank you for listening.